I'm going to show you some stuff, and I'll leave it to you to decide if it's really cool. I think it's really cool, because Keynote cannot be anything else but cool. Welcome. And so I thought I'd start, well, at something like a beginning. And on my screen here, you're going to see it says Keynote 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 sessions. And they're going to be broken up like this, so you know. We're going to talk about some things that, I'm going to be frank with you, that basic stuff, that when I use Keynote, I'm using it as, well, as you saw Craig's presentation, kind of a dynamic, almost animation tool, interactive, clicking, going to websites. I love that aspect of Keynote, but I'm going to tantalize you and make you wait for that part. Just a little, just a little. We're going to get some cool stuff in today too, but I want to make sure you know the groundwork too. Stuff that I sometimes would pass over if I weren't so ethical about it. So we have themes and master slides we're going to talk about, and how to transition from slide to slide. So the bread and butter of Keynote, things you need to know. And I'm going to start, well, like I said, at the beginning. Here I do have a slide, a little show, a little Keynote document here, but I'm going to show you what happens when you don't. How do you start such a thing, and how to configure the program in general. There are a few preferences. Oh, hard. Starting with preferences. How exciting is that? Actually pretty cool. So if you've got Keynote and you're launching it, if you go to the Keynote menu and choose Preferences, one thing that we have to contend with in this current version, 09, that we didn't have to do in the past, so that person in the chat room who had the older version has an advantage that some of us don't have, and that is to save new documents as packages. Because as my recollection serves, and I think it's right, that former versions did this automatically. The new version won't. And you will want it to if you want to hack your presentation. And by that I mean go in there and tweak things and edit them after that you've added, say, pictures from various sources. It all gets thrown into this package, and then you can get inside that nugget and make it better. So that is the one thing I'm going to suggest almost beyond anything else. So right there. Also, so you can actually edit stuff that you wouldn't normally be able to edit, there's a copy theme images into document. And so when we start perusing the themes, they have images. Apple has included in these. Some of them are really neat, but they might not be as neat as you want them to be. So if those theme images are built into the document and editable in the package, you get into the package, open up those theme images, and you can edit them in Photoshop. So you might need to be reviewing some of the Photoshop classes we've done here in the past. So those two things right there, I think you're going to want to check before you move on. Another thing that's kind of neat, and I'll just mention this and then we'll get going, is animations. It says include obsolete animations in choice. I love that, obsolete. I don't think so. I think some of them are quite useful from older versions, and some of them I really, really liked. And it does make the list much, much longer. So for now, I'm going to leave it unchecked. A little later, I'll turn it back on, and we'll see what new things have found their way into the program. And we'll have fun with those. And I'm going to, before we're done this morning, I'm also going to pop in to some of these other preferences. A couple things that you might want to know about. Okay, I can't help myself. I just show you one more right now, just right now. That is using, say, your iPhone or iPod Touch as a remote. And so all you have to do is essentially hit a switch, and immediately this machine and your iPhone start conversing. You tap in a number, and boom, your iPhone or iPod Touch is now a remote for your presentation on your machine.
So I've got a question from the chat room.
Already, yeah.
Do you need, will that just work automatically, or do you need an app in order to do that?
That's a good question. I don't think I need an app to do that.
Right.
I'm doing it right now. Nothing like a live experiment. I mean, the first time I did it, it just worked. And so let me pop back out here. And you know what? I think I might need an app to do that. Yes, it does. The Keynote app. And I'm trying to launch it right now. There it is. Keynote Remote. And it says it's connecting to Keynote on. Oh, my machine back at the ranch. I will wait.
Will that also work with an iPad?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Well, it's kind of funny. It's a rather large remote.
Well, yes, but there was a question in the chat room.
No, it makes good sense. In fact, one thing, very few experiments I've done with this so far, and I mostly like to use the very covert little Apple remote generally, but it's easily lost. So sometimes I don't have it with me. So having an iPhone is usually a better bet. So I've only used the iPhone as my remote once or twice. I used my iPad once. Funny thing, depending on the orientation with which you hold it, you will see either your presenter notes or not. And then you'll see a preview of the upcoming slide or not. But you can't see both the upcoming slide and the notes at the same time.
That could be tricky.
A little tricky, a little fly in the ointment, if you will, but yeah, you know, it's not
And
perfect.
I've heard I mentioned in the chat room that the app is a pay app.
Is it paid?
That's what I'm told.
It is?
And Craig is
Confirming that?
Yes.
Well, what a spendy guy I am. I didn't even think twice because I own this much. Like I said, I've only used it a couple times, and I already think it's worth the money, but we'll see how that works out in the end. All right, I'll come back to some of the other preferences that you wanna configure and mess with later. All right, let's make a new slideshow, and then I'll gently segue into the one I've already started to build here. But if you're going to build a new presentation, file new like everywhere else. And notice there's also new from theme chooser. Well, right now I've got my preferences set up that when I do new, I get the theme chooser. And Apple has continually added to these themes. So generally speaking, you're going to find pretty much a good starting point in here. Whether it's what you're going to want to keep all throughout, I don't know. I'm always tweaking. Then again, I like playing in Photoshop and making images that I can pull into Keynote. But we can start with any one of these since I'm going to Italy soon. I'll go over here to Venetian. And I want you to notice that as I move my cursor over this little preview, it shows me different parts of the theme, different master slides for charts and graphs and whatnot. And so you can get a sense of what many of the slides look like in that theme, not just one. And that's the case for all of these. So I'll come back to Venetian, but it's nice for you to see, I think, a few of these. Some rather modern looking, some more classic, some just in a very neutral theme. So if you're showing off photography, here's one in particular, portfolio. Very, very clean and nice. Some a bit more oldie-fashioned, which I can like, including, of course, vintage. I love the kind of weathered corners, as if the pages are aging. I think that's kind of sweet. And yeah, a whole slew of them. And we'll start with any one we want. And again, I'm going to start with Venetian. And so I'll just either hit choose or double click on it. Oh, and since I am on a machine here that has a particular resolution, one usually likes to choose the resolution of the device on which we usually present. And since I'm presenting on a 720p HD screen, I'm going to choose that resolution. Of course, you can go much higher or lower. And just before you ask, I'm going to tell you, yes, you can customize these as well. So I'll choose my 720p, even enlarge the previews a little bit so we can make sure we're not getting into something that we did not intend. Looks good to me. I'll double click right on the preview. There it goes. And it launches that theme. And I get a slide with instructions emblazoned boldly right in the middle of it. And we'll get to what that's really all about in a second. One thing I'm going to change, though, so I can see a little better, is I'm going to head down here where it says 100%, and I'm going to go a little smaller here, just so you can see what the whole slide looks like. That's too small. You can handle 75%. There we go. And you can see this has got this little cut edge, little swirly doodads, of which I am so fond. And again, the yellowing edge to the page to give it a little aged appearance. I love that. And so this double click to edit thing is one of the things I want to engage you with about talking about getting type set up in a general fashion so that you can have a sense of what the text will look like when you present without having to even type anything in it yet. So this double click to edit. If you notice over here, that is over here in the little previews of your slides, the slide tray here, it shows nothing. Because if I were to play the slideshow right now, nothing would show up. In fact, I'll hit play. So those double-click to edits are merely placeholders. They aren't something you can actually show. Now I'll hit escape. And so if you really want text, and it says double-click to edit, well, you better do that. I double-click, and I'll put in some text, and down here maybe some subtext. I'll click off here, and you might be able to perceive a little tiny thing in the middle of that little slide preview here. And if I play the slideshow, hitting play, indeed, that text is now real and not just placeholder. Now, where do we configure these things? Well, first of all, the themes are still accessible. So if you look at this and think, you know, that text just isn't as pretty as I'd hoped, or these little curly doodads are offending me in some way, the themes can be rechosen, even if you've invested some time in building some slides, by coming back here to themes and picking something else. So for example, you notice I already have some text on there, but if I went to a completely different look and feel, I'll deal. Doesn't support this aspect ratio, but I didn't have much invested in it anyway. Notice, still the same content, but the fonts have changed. And in some cases, of course, am I going to hit one randomly? Probably not. User defined placeholder text. Some of these are really fun. Sometimes the text will actually be rearranged depending on which theme you pick. But it'll keep your content. And even if it doesn't respect the aspect ratio, that is the shape of the slide, it'll start to move content around. Unfortunately, it'll also sometimes stretch images, which I think is a little unfortunate. All right, I'm going to go back to my Venetian. Where are you? There you are. There it is, pretty again. All right. Now, some of these things are set up in our master slides. And you're going to see a list here, right next to where it says themes, a list of master slides, which allow me to pick different masters to apply to the current slide. So here on the left, again, I see my list of slides. Okay, list of slide. I've got one. And I can choose a different master to apply to it. So for example, if I was going to go grab a photo to drop into here, I might pick photo horizontal or photo vertical, depending on the nature of the photo I was going to place. Here's photo vertical. Again, notice my text has not gone away. It fits into the new context. Here's the picture. Well, is that a real picture? Yeah, a little bit. As I hover over it, it does identify this as a placeholder. It says drag a new media file here to replace it. Well, that's easy enough. If I had another image, and I do, let's see, I'll get some pictures here, and this is what? Vertical. So if I take a vertical picture, drag it on top of the placeholder, I now have my vertical picture in place of the placeholder. Cool. I think so too. I can get in there, I just double-clicked on the picture, and I can move it around within a built-in mask. We'll be talking about masking at some length next time. Deselect, and I've got the result. Of course, these are the masters built into the theme. I don't know about you. This is creativeLIVE, right? So we're talking to people who are creative and probably don't mind having a pretty and effective starting point, but very often you're going to want to go in and massage these things to your will, to create your own masters, your own themes. And so that's where I want to take you, almost right away. Well, I can show you two ways to get to your masters. One, almost feels like you're revealing a secret. If you come up to the upper left here, where it says slides, there's a little textured doodad right here. I can grab that and start dragging it down. Revealing the master slides. Ho, 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 ho. Of course, you don't have to know that secret handshake to get there. That would be cruel. Apple is known for being, friendly, user-friendly. And so, of course, we have a whole slew of menus along the top. Well, this is a view thing. We're unhiding something. We're revealing something. And if you come in here, notice there is a command to show your master slides. So if I choose that, it pulls that little doodad down for you so you can see that there's something hiding up there. Okay, what is hiding up there? Well, it is the masters that we saw the list of up here. And it helps if I'm clicking on the right side of my mouse. That is the left side of my mouse. And notice as I go through here and click on my master slides, things look a little different. Instead of saying double click to edit, it's actually identifying the text by name. This is the text you saw that I double clicked on to edit, but this is the original, the master, the stuff that we actually can change. So if I go to any of these masters, and generally where one starts if one is building an entirely new theme is the blank, which has nothing on it except for a background picture, which can also be changed momentarily. But let's take one similar to the one that we had messed with here, the photo vertical. And to make some changes here, we're going to need something more than just what's in our menus. We're going to need our inspector. And so, again, along the top here, not in the menus, although, yes, we can get there from here too. View menu, show inspector will be that, and a keyboard shortcut, Option Command I. But there's also a very handy button here along the top in the toolbar, Inspector. I'll pull this down. And amongst the many things you see here, a whole bunch of tabs. And I'm going to take you on a little tour of this momentarily, but I just want to show you one practical benefit of having this thing before I give you a whole litany of other options. Notice, though, I've highlighted this little piece of text. And this is for a title. This is my body text. And notice right here in the inspector, text inspector, where I can then start to make some changes to both the color and spacing in this text. Now, if anyone's used another Apple application in the past, I bet you know how to get to your typographic options. Pretty much in any Apple application, if you want to get to a font list and other things, you can hit Command T. Now, if you didn't know that, you're not lost, because you can come up here as well. Again, there's a little formatting toolbar right along the top here, which also gives you access to font, and a preview no less, style, and size. And so if you decided, this all caps thing is a little too much of a screamer. I don't like that so much. Perhaps there are other ways we can present it, or maybe the color is offensive, or the size. Well, here's, for example, color. So right along here, Baskerville. Yeah, it's not a bad font. Size 66. How did they choose that? I don't know. And then the color. I click right on the color. Of course, you get a series of swatches, although you can pick from a color inspector and get a more finely gradated set of choices. Maybe we want to go have one bit of cool tones in here besides all the warm ones. Probably doesn't really go, but we'll go for it anyway. There. Now, for this master, we have a new color for our text. You'll notice that on our slide, the text color has changed. So the text master has infiltrated its way into our slide. So you don't just have to pick a whole theme. You can go in there and massage that theme by changing the masters one at a time. Yeah, I know, one at a time. There are quite a few of these in here. And so some people like to just simply go in, delete, bang, 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 just take them all out and start with the blank and then build up from there as they need it. All right, let me tell you a little bit more about the inspector, though. The inspector is a place where we're going to be spending a ton of time. And then I'll come back and tweak some more masters. In fact, let me actually turn to my other presentation, the one that I already started building, this one, and show you a little bit about some of the choices I made in this document. I'll first click on this text, which was just some of the as I call it in the other one, subtext. And I can also use the inspector here to change some characteristics of it. In this case, I'm not going to change the color. I am going to change maybe some spacing here. And we have nice, simple slider to affect line spacing. We would call that leading somewhere else. And here it's expressing itself as a multiple of the font size, 1.2 times, which is a pretty standard amount of space to have. You notice also right up there at the top, alignment options. And this is, some of this is duplicated right up here at the top. Alignment right here in the formatting toolbar. But beyond that, we can do some other things that are a bit more esoteric. Do I see a hand raising in the room?
Yes. Molly M. from the chat room
Hi,
would
Molly.
like you to. Where did you select Show All Masters again?
Oh, Show Masters? That was under the View menu. Show Master Slides.
And Chick Design is asking, can you kern letter pairs in Keynote?
I'm going to say, alas, no. I could try, but this will want to affect, I guess we could say track. It will track the text. It will do tracking, not kerning. If I try to use Option and left and right arrows, that does something else entirely.
Ah,
So I must give you the bad news. Or better yet, don't want that. One thing that we sometimes do is, what I've had to do is I'll go into a program where I can kern more carefully and create a dumb image. An Illustrator or a Photoshop document, and drop that in here instead.
so get your lettering. If you need to be precise about your lettering,
Go elsewhere.
go elsewhere.
Yep. One sad thing is I'm rather fond of one of Adobe fonts, Bickham Script Pro. Bickham Script Pro, and occasionally in Keynote it just won't run that. It's a script font, so it should flow beautifully from one letter to the next, and occasionally it treats each letter as if it's its own word, and it looks pretty silly. So it breaks my heart because I'd like to use it more often. Some people might have caught me using it in the past in a Keynote presentation and might have noticed it looked a little funny because I just decided I want to use it anyway. But no, I should have gone to Illustrator or Photoshop and dealt with it there. So, yep, sorry for the bad news, but there it is. There it is. Now, one thing I want to do here with this text, right here, themes, masters, and transitions, that's what we're talking about today, and obviously a little bit about text. I want to do something to make this look a bit more list-like. And so here in the text inspector, not only do we have some basic things about text, as well as the stuff up in the formatting toolbar, but we also have a method for making a different number of columns, which I think would look silly in this particular case, but know that you can. So if you had a lot to say, you can have a column-based text box, so you can have much text. That's not what I want to do here. And bullets. Now, bullets would certainly help this look like a list. And as you can see right now, if I choose the Bullets tab, it says Bullets and Numbering, no bullets. Well, obviously we saw that coming in. But I can change this readily enough. There are an astonishing array of ways to even do silly bullets. Text bullets, which let you pick a glyph. Image bullets, and of course, Keynote doesn't make you have to go somewhere else to find images. It'll offer you a slew of images, actually variations on a few, some of which may be more or less appropriate to the theme you're working in. A custom image. Now notice the ... When I choose this, it's going to ask me to pick one. I don't have one handy right now, so I guess that's not a good choice. And here, numbers. And I think that would be the best choice. So actually, instead of applying it just to that one bit of text, I think I should pick it for all of them. And so I now have the numbers 1 through 4, since we're talking about weeks 1 through 4. That makes better sense. If I was going to be doing this on multiple slides, like maybe I would continue this list on a second slide if I had several more weeks to do. On the subsequent slides, I don't want them to start over at 1. I can indicate that I want them to start at a later number. Oh, my cursor is in the second line. Silly bird. Here, let me do this. I'll deselect and reselect that whole box. Start at 1. It's going to keep doing that to me, isn't it? Start at 1. Continue from previous. Start at... There we go. Because I had my cursor stuck into the second line, it was kind kind of stuck on the idea that's really where I want to start counting. There we are. That's better. So if you do continue a list from slide to slide, it is possible to get Keynote to know that. That's a pretty sweet thing. So numbers, bullets, custom bullets. You can control the indenting for these. It's actually typographically not too shabby. It takes a little work to get in there, but not too bad at all. All right. So there's a little texty thing. And notice in this particular presentation, I generated a few other slides just quickly and generically. Obviously, I didn't linger too long on the composition. Stuff, more stuff, less stuff. And what I want to get to at this point is a little bit about transitions. Now, right now I'm acting in a kind of ad hoc way. I can apply a different transition to each of the slides I have here, or I can apply a transition to my master. So if you're going to be using a master periodically or frequently, you're going to want to be able to consistently apply the same, not only type styles, but also the same kind of transition as you do the slideshow, so that as it goes from one slide to the next, you're not going to have something random, unless, of course, you want to. So since I'm using this master on these slides here, I'll go to this master perhaps, and let's choose a transition for this slide. We'll find that here on the master slide inspector. The reason that's called master slide is simply because I highlighted a master slide before I came here. If I was still on the regular slides, it would just be the regular slide inspector. It's a good little double check, though, to make sure that you're editing what you thought you were. So if you're just highlighting your sample slides rather than the master, you'll have a little double check right there at the top of the inspector. And two things usually we are editing on the master. Of course, it's appearance. And as you see here, there's a number of choices here, whether or not there's going to be a slide number at the bottom. This is also a rather important one before I go to the transitions, allowing objects on slide to layer with the master. So if you have master objects, you can send things below or above those master objects. So you can develop a beautifully layered effect. I just wish we had a layers panel per se, like we do in some of the other programs we deal with from Adobe, for example. That would be nice, but probably adds a little bit more complication than Apple wants to right now. But here, over here is transition. And right now, there is none applied. In other words, they're leaving it to you to decide what you would like. And so since I'm editing my master, I'll pick one. I believe Craig is fond of one called Flip. So in your honor, I'm going to pick Flip to this master. And let's also choose a direction. Top, bottom, left, right. And notice how the procedure goes here. You start at the top, work your way down, and depending on the direction, some directions, in this particular transition maybe not, but in some of them, the duration might appear slightly different depending on which way you go. For example, there's one here called Move In, and depending on the distance one has to move, horizontally be greater than vertically, you might want to change the duration. Of course, the shorter the duration, the faster the moving in. You don't want to let your audience fall asleep while the slide is transitioning. So here's Flip. And I'll just do a top to bottom. There. And when should the transition start? Well, if you're giving your audience a chance to read, or for yourself to point out the items on the slide, you're probably going to want to wait for a click. And by that I mean a click on your iPhone, your Apple remote, one of several keys on the keyboard. I prefer to use my arrow keys, left and right. You can hit a number of things to get the slide to move on to the next one. Or another choice is automatically. And so when the slide comes on screen, there will be some delay. Yes, you should have some delay usually so people have a chance to read what you've got. or to see what you want them to see. And then the slide will transition to the next one automatically without your interaction. We're going to play with that to some advantage in a subsequent class, so we can actually simulate some really cool animation effects. For now, though, I'll stick to probably a more basic one here, just on click. Now let's go see what this has done to the slides that use this master. And as you can see, each of these, which use that master, as I click on slide, slide, and slide, oh, let me reselect those. I was playing with those earlier, didn't I? I changed them. So let me come up here to Format. After having selected these slides, here's one. I click on one. I will shift click on the last one so all three are selected. See, your instructor doesn't let his computer sit idle for long. I constantly tweak and play with things, and it gets me in trouble. We were talking about our favorite transitions before class, and I was playing with one or two to show Craig the ones I like. And it gets me in trouble. But now you know. You can have changed your master, and you might not see that affect a slide that you have because you've changed it independently later. But no, you're not lost. I can return here to the Format menu, reapply master to slide. Again, that was Format, down near the bottom, reapply master to slide. And what you'll see happen is, well, looking at the inspector, it's back to flip, top to bottom, on click, rather than whatever whatever nonsense I was experimenting with before class. All right, how do we get to see this play out? Well, I'll highlight the first slide to which I've applied this. I'll hit play. There's our slide. And by reapplying the master, it's ready for some bullet points. This particular master came with some, and that's why there's a stray bullet here. We're going to pretend not to see it for the moment. And I'm going to tap my right arrow key, and there's the vertical flip. And there it is again, lasting about 1 second. I'll hit escape to leave that, and it shows me selected here the last slide where I left off. Now, if this was a slide that was never going to have bullet points, I'll return here to the master, highlight that text block that has all those bullet points that are giving me some stray bullets, and simply delete it. Going back to my other pages, no more stray bullets. Sweet. All right, so there you have it. The editing of a master, at least this one. Now, there's more to it than just text and how it behaves. Let me go back here to this master slide. Notice there's a picture all the way around in the background here, and that will be an appearance attribute for this master slide. In our previous little foray into this panel, you'll notice there were a couple of checkboxes, but getting down a little further, you see that the background chosen for this is an image fill, and in particular, the one that they've given to us. You can pick a number of other options. One I don't often use, a tinted image fill, using the image that they have with some color in front of it, with whatever opacity you want that color to have. So if you wanted to give a little hint of a tint to a picture that you have back there, you can. Age it a little bit more, I suppose.
And I see it changes the other slides as well.
Good eye. As I crank this up, here, let me pick something subtle. Yes, you can see the slides that use this master changing at the same time. For any of you who've have done some InDesign classes and play with InDesign, you're very familiar, I hope, with master pages. If you're not, you should be. Just me being the school teacher here. This is the same idea. Change on the master, all the slides that use that master change with it. I'm not fond of this tinted image fill for this particular slide, although it can be quite cool. Notice we also have color fill, so just a flat color. And frankly, sometimes an image fill is cool, but sometimes it adds a little too much visual distraction. And so just a simple color. And if I click on that, again, I can edit both the color and its opacity, so it blends into whatever else is behind it. In this case, just white would have been behind it. Gradient fill. Now this is kind of fun, especially in that I'm very much accustomed to using gradients in Adobe products where gradients are insanely complex, or can be, especially in Photoshop. Here this is beautifully simple. I adjust the angle at which I want the gradient to go, flip it or flop it as I wish, and I click on either end of this gradient, the color at this end or this end. I choose the color I want, click on the other end, choose the color I want. That was a big mistake. Demonstrating can often be dangerous to one's aesthetic. There it is. So you can easily pick gradients. I love how easy that is. I love how easy that is. Or, of course, I can return to my image fill, which was, I guess, in this case, a lot more tasteful than anything I was just playing with. And notice, remember now, when we made the new slide, we picked 720p. And we had other choices. So how does this background image know what to do? Well, it scales itself. And depending on the scale I choose, you might see, for example, these rounded corners, they might get a little stretchy. So some images will do better scaled than others. Here's stretch. That doesn't seem to be too badly harmed. Original size. Oh, we're apparently there. Scale to fit. Well, since it is apparently the original size, I guess I'm not going to be doing much harm with this. But in other images, you might see a little funny effect as a result. But here's the cool bit. Right there, it says choose. So if you have designed, lovingly built, constructed in Photoshop or Illustrator, for example, the image of your dreams that you would like to see behind all these slides, all this text, all this content, you can choose it here or simply drag it onto that little doodad, that little proxy. In fact, let me show you that.
I was just going to ask if you had a demonstration for us.
I do indeed. I don't have maybe the best image for this, but I do have an image for this in the same color scheme. It might be a little busy, but it'll take text onto the right.
Well, after seeing what you did with gradients, I'm not too worried.
Sorry, I'm thinking about that. Maybe you should be. I'm dragging on top of this other image.
I'm just thinking, how could it be worse?
It could not be. Now, so because this has a very round element in it, depending on the exact shape of the image and the slide to which you're applying it, sometimes the effect can be unhappy. So notice I have scale to fill. So now maybe some of the image is falling out of the slide. Scale to fit. So you see the whole image, but then you get these embarrassing gaps. Usually a fill would be right. Original size, in this case, is much too large. And now we're seeing some real differences. And if it was small, maybe you designed a beautiful pattern. I know how to make a pattern in Photoshop and Illustrator, but sometimes the result is not always what I like. But if you're good at making patterns, you can tile your image so that if it was small, maybe a few hundred pixels square, it would repeat itself throughout this entire slide. So if you have a pretty pattern, go for tiling. In this case, I think scale to fill was probably the best choice. So it crops a little bit of the image and then fills the other three sides nicely. So I guess it's losing a little bit on the right of this image. And this particular image can take some light colored text here on the right-hand side. And as you can see, each of the slides that use this master has changed. And so I can take maybe this text block, change its position, go back to the text inspector, the text tab in the text inspector, and change the color of this text to make it a little bit more legible on this dark brown background. And looking at our slides, each one is now updated.
I just had a question from the chat room.
Yeah.
Wanting to confirm which version we're using again.
09.
09, okay. And so if she's not seeing some of the info in her inspector that you're showing,
That's probably why.
well, actually, she has 09. So
Oh.
are there parts that you can turn on and off?
Sorry, I'm like, I'm not sure if
This is something that's hard to troubleshoot without seeing her screen.
It's
so,
very difficult
yeah.
to do. But the problem is, I am kind of an obsessive Keynote user, and so when I've launched this morning, it could have been in a slightly non-standard state without my noticing. But since I'm always tweaking it, that could be the case. But it would be helpful if I could see your screen, but alas, I cannot.
And we also have a question about the text.
Yes.
Can you add a transparency to the text?
Yes, you can.
Ooh, goody.
Let me show you. Well, to anything, to absolutely anything. So for example, I select this text box, and now notice how I do this. I click off to the side, I click on the text box, I've got the whole box. And I'm doing this on one slide, not my master, which means if I move this over here on this local slide, go back to my master and move this master text around, it's not moving on the slide where I had moved it more willfully. So it's heads up, if you deviate from the master, that deviation will stick. So just letting you know. So if I take this text, or an image, or pretty much anything else, in the inspector, there's, okay, they say graphic inspector, but it's talking about any, oh, yeah, there it is. Whew. I wasn't noting it right away. Any box, anything that you've selected, and allows you to adjust its opacity. Whether it's a photo or text or anything else. It's, strangely, I know, I confess, the name would throw you. It's the graphic inspector.
So pretty much anything on the screen is a graphic at that point.
Right, when you select the whole box. Exactly. Likewise, right next to the graphic inspector, come on, there it is, what they call metrics. Essentially size and shape. Size, shape, and angle. And so if I want to knock this a little bit askew, it won't let me. Why? Because I did something bad in a previous life, I'm sure. I will troubleshoot that later. Generally, it has no problem doing that.
In terms
Yeah,
of
please.
changing the graphic, is there a way to is there an eyedropper option of some way to check to get a color from the background so you can tie the colors in?
Yes, there is. So let me go back to my text inspector again, and notice the color chip that's sitting there at the top. Again, I can get to that either here or from the formatting toolbar across the top if it's there, if it's on. Just a quick check here. Now I'll come back to that. I'll do the text inspector here. Click to choose color, and in the default color picker, there are others. And well, I guess in all of them. I thought it went away with one or two of them, but I was wrong. There's a little magnifying glass. This is a classic Apple interface. I click on that little magnifying glass and move my cursor anywhere in the screen I like, and it's magnifying individual pixels to great magnification. And I can choose any color by clicking. And it has just changed the color of whatever selected to the color I've magnified.
Cool.
No, it's great, and it works for not just text, but simple graphics as well.
Especially good for those of us who have a tendency to make colors clash.
You want to work a little bit more in sync with what's around?
Yeah.
This works well. I'm lucky that I had something in this image that was light enough to stand up against this darker area, so that serves pretty nicely.
And also from the
Yes.
chat room, when you deviate an object from the master, is there a way to tie it back to the master, or do you have to go back to the master?
Oh, and go to Format, Reapply Master to Slide, in which case it really does, including the color decisions.
So but there's no way to
Say this object
and
singularly.
reply and have it go backwards to the master.
This one object, yes. Let me think about that. Will it be just this object? I'm having a little memory thing. I think when I right click and I choose Reapply Master, or Control click Reapply Master to selection, no, that is the selection. So I guess that is an a la carte reapplication of the master. So just to that one object.
Okay, so you couldn't apply the selection to the master.
Oh, to the master. Sorry,
Yeah.
I was caught up in my own internal processing there. I could. Ooh, we're getting ahead, but it's okay. If I can answer a question, I'm happy to do it.
If I'm going off topic, go ahead and say we'll deal with it later.
No, it's okay. Let's just do what we did, because I do like the color choice we made better than this, So let me go there, and let's say that we do this, and like, oh my God, that's the most beautiful thing ever, and we want to keep it. Up under Format, there's a Copy Style command. Copy Style. I choose that. I can go up to my master, select the thing to which I want to apply that formatting. Formatting, Paste Style.
Ah.
And it didn't do a bloody thing.
Ah.
Did I miss? No, I didn't. You know what I'm suspecting? That color might be the exception. Because check this out. If I go here and I change, oh, I don't know, font, anything. Here, I'll pick something very different. Okay? Different. We all agree that's different. Copy Style. Go to the master. Paste Style. That didn't work either. Something's amiss, my friends. Something is definitely amiss. There we go.
So you needed to have highlighted the text
Yes.
in order for that to happen.
Now, that won't be the case with graphics. And
Okay.
I often take advantage of that there. Basic shapes. So let me go and pick that color again. And this time my text is highlighted, but that shouldn't matter for getting the color. There it is. Format, Copy Style. Go here. Paste Style. Yay, we got it.
Ah.
There we go.
And another question from the chat room.
Beautiful.
When you change the master, are you changing it globally in Keynote or just the presentation, the document presentation you're working on?
The presentation you're working on.
Okay, so it maintains its formatting.
Oh, outside of this
Outside,
presentation.
yeah.
And in fact, one of the goals of doing this is to create your own theme.
Okay.
So we're not totally destroying a theme right now. And so if you've built a series of masters, you see this document has only 2, and they're not even that harmonious. But if you did go through, tweak master after master, adjusting colors, this is probably a perfect time to mention this final step in creating your own theme. Under the File menu, of course, you have Save, Save As, nothing unusual there. Of course, revert to saved if you feel like you've made a big mistake since the last time you saved. We'll be talking exporting in the last class, where we can export to all kinds of formats. But right down here at the bottom, Save Theme. And so when you choose that, you get to name it whatever you like, and usually something that kind of indicates the feel of the theme. Notice where it's going. It's going into a themes folder deep in the system, which is relevant to Keynote. So it's in the Keynote application support. So it'll be amongst the many you can choose from when you create new documents, at least on this machine. But it is a document, so you can move it from machine to machine as long as it goes into the same folder. And that way you'll have a theme of your own particular set of fonts and styles and good
All my
stuff.
own wonderful bad choices.
Or mine. Let's go with mine. Yours are no doubt better than mine. No doubt. All right. But let's return here for a second. That was a good little foray into customization. Now, notice this slide looks wholly different than the others. And that's not going to be uncommon for you to have several slides that stand out, like beginning a new section of a presentation, or one that's going to hold nothing but a photo, or have a movie, or even a web link to something else. And so we'll return to this kind of unique slide. And again, check on the transitions that we had applied. Yes. Oh, this one's the one that we did not change. Remember when we edited this master, we did flip, and then that got applied to these 3. This one uses a different master, and it's still using flop. And before you ask, the difference between flip and flop is notable. Notice I'm clicking right here in the inspector, the transition inspector here for the slide. I love that little tiny animation. It shows you what it's going to do. Not just when you pick that particular transition, but if you didn't quite get it, you just click on the little preview here, and it does it again and again and again until you get really sick of watching it. And here you can see the difference. And if that's not big enough, and very often it will not be, just click on play, and then use my right arrow here, and that's flop. Great if you're showing people the contents of a book you wrote and you're flipping through the pages. And there's flip. Very cool. Now, we did a transition to our master, which affected all of these. There's nothing wrong with going to individual slides and deviating from it, as long as you know that will override whatever the master does. And no matter what you do to the master, it won't help you here. So what I want you to notice is a couple of these are by, well, actually they're all broken up into topics for the most part. Text effects, object effects, which moves the stuff on the page around, on the slide around, 3D effects, so the slide appears to move through space, and 2D effects. Now, since these three slides, stuff, more stuff, and last stuff, all have text-based things with some text in common. Let me select all three. Click on one, shift-click on this one. Text effects. A couple of these are neat. Like anagram. I have such hopes for anagram, but it never quite does what I want it to do. I'll show you what it does, though. Anagram says, okay, text on transitions text on this slide into the text on the following slide. It says make sure that there is text on both this slide and the one following.
That would make sense.
When you get sick of seeing a warning that's like, you can click don't show this again. A couple of these are good reminders, though. I'll hit OK, and I'll resist the urge to click don't show again. And I'll just play this. Hit the play button. And when I hit the right arrow, watch the word stuff. Because there's a ligature, it did something different. When we were playing with this morning, just before we did this class, it did something different. So it's font dependent. Oh, there it just didn't know what to do with the letters. Oh, that is fun. So let me actually go back here to my master, change this again. Back to Baskerville, perhaps. Not doing ligatures this time. I'll play this and see if it behaves differently. Yeah, it does. Watch the F's. And it doesn't know what to do with the word stuff from the second to the third slide. It's a cool idea. What it's supposed to do is move letters around if they are in common on each slide. But, yeah.
I guess you need more letters, perhaps?
Or, yeah, even with more or fewer, it can be more dynamic and interesting with more letters. A paragraph, it can be kind of cool looking. But I would love for it just to do a nice little Scrabble tile thing, you know, moving them around for me. But
That's what I pictured when I saw that.
sigh. But, yeah, I keep wanting it to do more than it does. A couple that we'll be playing with in the subsequent classes here. Magic Move, very cool thing. I'll get to it. But let me show you a couple of others here, just one from each section at least. Object Push or Perspective or Revolve. These have to do with the objects on the slide, of which we have one right now. If I do Object Push, notice these two slides use the same background image. So when I play and I hit next slide, the background doesn't move around at all. Keynote knows it's continuous from one to the next. So the only stuff that moves are the objects. That's why they call it Object Push. So it doesn't feel as different. It doesn't feel like you're moving to an entirely new agenda. Perspective, again, keeps the background similar. I know a shortcut for playing. Puts the content in perspective and sends it off, pulls the new content in perspective, and then writes it. Some of these are pretty cool. Some of them are, of course, over the top. I can get carried away as easily as anyone, then I try to back off. Sometimes for a photographic presentation, Iris, or there was another one. I guess I should turn on the old ones again. So back to preferences, as I promised I would. Include so-called obsolete animations and choices. I don't know if it's going to make me have to quit and restart. No. Shutter, there it is. Notice the lists have grown here. Shutter, is kind of a silly one. I should apply that to all three of these just to be really egregious. You can hate me. It's okay.
Question from the chat room. Does
Am I
the
sane? What?
object perspective work only with text, or will it work with images
Anything.
as well?
Anything.
Anything. Okay.
All kinds of stuff. Moves around. No, very cool stuff. And what I end up using most, oh God, the list is too long. There we go. Dissolve. Just a very gentle, selecting those again, just a simple dissolve from one slide to the next. Just, and it's probably the most boring because it's the most ubiquitous, but it ends up being probably the most soothing and least jarring in a presentation. So it ends up being the one I use far more often than anything else. All right. Maybe wipe. But by applying different transitions to the slides themselves and to the individual objects in a slide, you can make some very exotic effects. And here's where I'm going to kind of segue out of this. Notice I've just selected on this slide this text box with these 4 paragraphs. I'm calling them paragraphs because I hit return at the end of each of these lines. And that's how Keynote knows to put the numbers in front of each of these. So before we call it a day, notice besides the slide inspector, right next to that is the build inspector. And this is a segue into our topic for next time. As you can see, week number 2, builds. We're going to use these to great effect. Just to show you one here for text that might be cool. All kinds of these. Some of them better for text than others, like typewriter. It looks like it's typing the text, for example. But, where are you? I'm going to do dissolve. And to the right it says by object, by letter, or by word. And that causes it to kind of flow in. I'll do by object. So it's the whole thing. The whole box will come and go. You can have it be all at once, or by bullet. And notice it says by bullet. It knows that this is a bulleted list, or, okay, numbered, but we'll call it a bulleted list. By bullet group, so that if you had sub-bullets. And one I really, really like is highlighted bullet. I find this one so awesome. Let me show you. Just a beautiful way to highlight steps in a procedure or any kind of list. Notice nothing's on screen until I advance to the next view. Same slide. There's bullet 1. When I go to the next one, notice the previous one diminishes. Still there so you can note it, like it, reflect on it, whatever you want to do, but you know which one we're talking about because it is highlighted. I love this one. And there it is.
Cool.
I think so.
That's really cool.
All right. Well, I'm going to show you a little preview of things to come. I'm going to get rid of this experiment because I'm kind of embarrassed by that one. Minimize this one. And take you here. Okay, I have to warn you. It's a little shameless promotion of my own little schoolhouse. In fact, I was building this as a promotion for my business, Luminous Works. This is a quill I built in Illustrator, and you'll see there are two of them on the screen. And what we're going to learn in subsequent weeks are ways of hiding different objects on the screen until you're ready for them, so that one object can build to another, how to animate them so that they move in an arbitrary way on the slide, as well as just across it, like with those pushes, and then take advantage of a slide transitioning from one to the next, So let me play this. I've got automatic transition set on everything except for the very first transition, so I'll be tapping my right arrow just once. I will confess that I worked on this for some time to get it balanced, all right? So this is not necessarily an easy thing, but it is cool that it is achievable. I'll hit play. And the ink runneth out, and then covers the whole screen.
Cool.
I was having some fun with that. Obviously, I was having too much fun. I have to tell you, I had a great time trying to make the ink flow out of the quill and onto the page at the same time. That was a pain, actually, but I had to share it. I had to share it. Can you tell, though, I really do love Keynote. I think it's a fabulous application. Keynote, yeah, great application. A great animation tool, as well as just a simple slideshow tool.
There's certainly a lot of cool stuff, just what you're showing today that can be done.
And this is, except for this thing, maybe I should get this off the screen. Except for this piece, even the basics are pretty effective. If you're just doing, what some people would call, what is that other program called from Microsoft?
PowerPoint?
That one. Yeah, I've heard of it. People refer to a lot of these as PowerPoints, kind of like Kleenex, But Keynote has got a slickness to it that doesn't have to be egregiously slick. I think it has an elegance to it that I think is that makes it approachable for these simpler presentations, and even for the advanced stuff. If I had to do that other thing, this one, in Flash, I'd be lost. I'm not a Flash guy. I have my specialties. Flash is one for somebody else, but I can still make this Flash.
And next week you'll be showing us
How to
the
do builds.
basics of how you did that.
Exactly.
Cool.
So fancier and fancier builds.